Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Sunday, and welcome to the beginning of our series where we're going to examine the Havamal verse by verse. Now, the Havamal, of course, is a poem, and it has been discussed many times by many people, and there are a lot of different translations to compare. The version I'm going to be looking at has been translated by Olive Bray, and it was edited by D.L. Ashleman. Another title for the Havamal is The Words of Odin the High One. It has 164 verses, and it's easy enough to read that straight through in one sitting. But I think sometimes when we read things quickly, we don't always absorb the full meaning and get the full sense of what's being discussed. So there's value in examining the verses one at a time, and that's what we'll be doing in this series. So we're going to begin with this one. The very first verse, and we'll be looking at the Olive Bray translation. Then we'll compare two other translations, and then we'll just kind of talk about it. So here goes. At every doorway ere one enters, one should spy round, one should pry round, for uncertain is the witting that there should be no foeman sitting within before one on the floor. Then we have the version by David A.H. Evans. The whole space behind an open door before entering it should be fully watched, should be fully pried, because it is uncertain to know where non-friends are already sitting in the house. And then the next version by Drunk. All doorways before entering should be spied out, should be scrutinized, for it is not known for certain where enemies sit in the way of the hall ahead. So, looking at these three different versions, what can we glean from this? When I think of the Norse and the Vikings, I don't think I could claim that caution is the first word that comes to my mind to describe them, either as the culture, the history, the religion, any of it. So I think it's very striking that the trait of caution and prudence is encouraged at the very beginning of the Havamal. Now, thanks to our technology and modern buildings, we are really insulated from the natural world and from other humans in a way that wouldn't have been dreamt of even just a few centuries ago, let alone during the Viking Age. And because we live this life of, relative safety, relative comfort, we forget, and sometimes we never learn in the first place, that the world is actually a very dangerous place. Nature can kill us. There are plenty of things in nature that can seriously harm us, sometimes irrevocably. Other human beings, not everyone is friendly towards us. Not everyone thinks being friendly towards stranger is a virtue at all. So it pays to be sensible and to act prudently when we are in unfamiliar surroundings, when we don't necessarily know what the rules of the road are. By contrast, the ancient world had no safety net, and people understood that all actions had consequences, and sometimes consequences could be deadly, and fairness and what was right and what anyone would prefer had nothing to do with it. Foolishness could cost you your life, and it didn't matter how old you were or what your position and circumstance in life was. Foolishness could get you killed, and even today it can still get us killed. We're just a little bit more insulated from that. It's not as probable that we'll meet with immediate irrevocable harm if we carry on in a foolish course. But what this teaches us, this particular verse, is that if we have an overly idealistic view of the world, this is an imprudent thing to do. And then trying to cultivate and maintain that viewpoint when it's contradicted by reality, that is to reject growing in wisdom. It is to reject reality itself. It's about embracing the illusions and the daydreams of a child. And that's not something that we should really be doing or encouraging ourselves to do, because we should be growing in wisdom, especially once we get older. And part of wisdom is understanding that the world, nature, and people are what they are, not what we would wish them to be. The other lesson in this verse is about taking personal responsibility for your own welfare. Don't rely on someone else to determine if a situation or a person or a particular choice is good or bad. Exercise your own power of reason. This means actively cultivating judgment. Oh, that word. It's about calling a spade and understanding that our feelings and our preferences do not necessarily coincide or dictate what is actually taking place. Coming to terms with this requires that we grow up. Not just grow old, but I'm talking about actual maturation, becoming a properly functioning adult. This is a difficult task because our society worships youth. It has largely abandoned morals, and it focuses entirely too much on getting material comforts and doing whatever you have to get ahead, regardless of the moral implications. It's not a good thing. That doesn't lead to maturity. It doesn't lead to wisdom. It doesn't lead to us even being an adult in the proper, true sense of the term. And it isn't easy to buck this trend, especially when we're surrounded by people who seem to be getting away with it. But understanding that such people are really punishing themselves, they are creating their own misery, especially misery in the long run. But clinging to this, that understanding, it requires faith on our part. It requires us to understand what virtue really is and to place a higher value on virtue than it is on short-term gains or trying to evade consequences. Because in the end, we all get exactly what's coming to us, and that's just the way that reality is. So I think this verse is a pretty good reminder of that. So let me know what you think of this, what your own ideas and thoughts about this particular verses are. If you have other translations you prefer, I'd love to know about them and to read them and see what they have to say. I think it'd be an awesome thing to discuss. And speaking of discussions, if you would like to discuss the Havamal or anything else having to do with paganism, please come see us at Blackbird's Brew. There's a link to join in the description box below, but in the meantime, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, like this video, and watch out for next week's installment on the Havamal. But for now, bye-bye.